I'm a forensic pathologist.
All right. I'm going to bring Exhibit 21 up there. In the possibility that you need to review a copy of your report.
Yes, sir, I see my report and I have printed my own copy of it as well.
Thank you. Doctor, first of all, where are you currently employed?
I'm employed by the Stanislaus County Sheriff's Department Coroner's Division in Stanislaus County, California.
And how long have you been there?
Since 2019.
All righty. And by the way, Doctor, I don't know whether it's old age or not, but my voice tends to go soft on occasion. So I'm using this microphone. But if you don't understand one of my questions, don't hear it, let me know. I'll repeat it. All right?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So, in your current position, can you describe for the jury what your daily routine is?
My daily routine is to deal with whatever cases California law brings us under the coroner's law, which are usually unnatural deaths or unexplained deaths or traumatic deaths, either by reviewing records, by reviewing laboratory tests, by doing autopsies and looking at other related tests.
All right. And when we use the term autopsy, I'm assuming most people know what that involves, but could you give us a general description? Let's say the local law enforcement agency is investigating a homicide, potential homicide. The victim's body is brought to you to perform an autopsy. Describe for us what you would do.
I would first review whatever records we have. We might, in certain cases, x-ray the body, such as in decomposed bodies. I would then do a preliminary examination, looking at the body for just overall appearances, even the clothing, what's on the body, recovering trace evidence if it hasn't already been done at the scene, then followed by a more detailed external examination, looking for natural disease processes, variations among people, and of course injuries, and then an internal examination of the entire body, where again I look for disease processes or injuries, and in that case internally I'll take samples to be tested or to be saved.
All righty. And counsel, where do I need to stand so you can?
I can see pretty good, thank you.
Okay. Doctor, let me take you back a few years. First of all, where did you attend medical school?
The University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center in Dallas.
And when did you graduate?
1981.
What did you do after that?
I was a family practice intern at St. Paul's Hospital, Dallas, Texas.
And so how did you come to get involved in pathology?
Actually, I worked my way through college and medical school as a lab tech in the blood bank, and it was sort of a natural fit. And I had a chance to go to New York Hospital.
And so you graduated from medical school. Do you consider yourself a forensic pathologist?
I would like to, and my credentials suggest I am.
Okay. So what I'm trying to get at here is, so how did you get to that?
I then trained in pathology at the New York Hospital Cornell University Medical Center from 82 to 85. I did a year of basic research as a fellow at New York Hospital Cornell. Then from most of 86 to 91, I worked at the Office of Chief Medical Examiner in New York City as a medical examiner. And during that time, I got my board certifications by the American Board of Pathology in anatomic and in forensic pathology.
So in the course of your career as a medical examiner, Can you estimate for us how many autopsies or post-mortem examinations you have done?
No, just several thousands. Typically, it's somewhere around 200 a year. This last year is the first year in a long time. It's like 160, or it's on track to being like 160.
All right. At some point, did you find your way to the valley here?
Yes, more than once.
And at one point in your career, were you employed at the Maricopa County Medical Examiner's Office?
Yes, sir.
And when was that?
I believe it's 2012 to 2015.
And when you left here, where did you go?
I went to Alameda County in San Francisco for their sheriff coroner division.
And you've used the term coroner. I've used the term medical examiner. Is there a difference?
Under California law, medical examiner, forensic pathologist, coroner's pathologist are basically describing the same job.
All righty. I want to take you to February of 2015. Were you employed here at that time?
2015?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I was.
And were you at some point, did you become involved in the investigation into the death of a young woman by the name of Allison Feldman?
Yes, sir.
And did you perform an autopsy or post-mortem examination of Miss Feldman's body?
On the 19th of February, yes, sir.
All right. Typically, how long does this type of procedure take?
An autopsy can be highly variable. It can be even less than an hour in a, unfortunately now, typical fentanyl overdose kind of case. Or I've had autopsies that have taken me over a day and a half, up to 2 days.
Let's go to Ms. Feldman. And if you need to refer to the exhibit, and now I've forgotten the exhibit number, the one that in the booklet in front of you.
000448. But again, I have a copy if you want to take that one back. It's the one you sent me.
Well, why don't we use this one?
Yes, sir.
It'll make it better for the record.
Okay.
And I forget the exhibit number, but it is Exhibit 21, which contains your report.
Sorry.
So can you tell me, Doctor, and if you need to refer to it, just let us know that you're referring to it. But what I want to ask you is the height.
Your Honor.
Could you approach, please?
Okay, Doctor, what I was about to ask you was if at some point you need to review the report to refresh your recollection, if you could let us know. I'm not going to ask you to read from your report, and I obviously at some point need to establish, whether you have a personal recollection of some of the details. So my first question to you is, do you recall today, without looking at your report, Miss Feldman's weight and height?
She's 5'7" and she's more than 150 pounds, but exactly how much I'd have to look.
And let me ask you this. Over the last couple of months, have you had occasion to review your original report?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
have you had occasion to review photographs that were taken during this post-mortem examination?
Yes, sir.
Did any of that help refresh your recollection?
Yes, sir.
Would looking at some of those photographs help you describe your observations that you made during your examination?
I think so. Yes, sir.
And Your Honor, at this point, for the record, we have a stipulation to the introduction of several photographs. They are 518 through 544, I believe.
Okay, and any objection?
No, Your Honor.
It's ordered admitting exhibits 518 through 544 into evidence.
As well as 468.
And any objection to 468? It's ordered admitting exhibit 468 into evidence.
Doctor, so how did Miss Feldman's body get to the medical examiner's office?
I don't know the details of the record of who transported and things of that nature, but personnel from our office went to the scene, secured the body in a pouch, sealed it, and brought it back to the office.
So I want to show you exhibit 529. What do we see here, Doctor?
We see probably the first picture taken by our technician showing the case number on the black and white metal marker board. And next to it is the sealed pouch with the zipper sealed by a medical examiner seal 000288.
And the number that we see here, 15-1238, what number is that?
That's the unique case number assigned to her.
So when I show you some of the photographs, is it possible that same number is going to appear?
It should.
All righty.
And then, of course, Mr. Imbordino, if you could just give me a heads up if you're going to show a sensitive photo.
I will, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Doctor, before we get into the details of your findings, what I would like to do in the event that there may be some jurors or people who don't hear some of these terms every day, I have a list of terms I want to ask you to define. All right, sir?
Yes, sir.
And Your Honor, I have provided a copy to the court reporter as well as defense.
Okay.
It's not an exhibit, just demonstrative purposes.
Okay. Any objections?
No, not at all.
Okay. Thank you.
First of all, Your Honor, can I ask if the jurors are able to see this?
If there's anyone who can't see it, could you raise your hand? And there are no hands raised.
So let's start at the top. These are some terms that I picked out myself, not for any particular reason, but let's start out with asphyxial injury. If we use that term, what are you describing?
Asphyxia injuries means injuries obviously related to asphyxia, with asphyxia being something that causes inadequate oxygen delivery to the blood or the body tissues and inadequate removal of carbon dioxide and waste products. So it's basically the kind of injuries from drowning, from choking, from strangling, from being crushed under the car jack to chemical poisonings, things of that nature. It's a very broad category.
All right, sir. Have you seen those type of injuries during your professional career?
Yes, sir. All of those that I described.
The next term, petechial hemorrhage. What would you be describing there?
Petechial hemorrhages are simply little pinpoint-sized hemorrhages, like this, literally the size of a pinpoint, that occur sometimes in tissues due to ruptured tiny blood vessels, and they're frequently a marking that some form of asphyxia occurred. They're not absolute proof of asphyxia, because I could see them in a heart attack victim sometimes, but they're the smoke that makes you worried about fire for asphyxia.
Some what may be common terms here, but abrasion, contusion, is there a difference between the two?
Yes, sir.
And describe what that is, please.
Abrasion is just a word that means a scrape, something that tears at the superficial layers of the skin, rubs them off, a scrape. Contusion is a word that simply means bruise, meaning that hemorrhaging has occurred into the tissues.
And with any of these injuries, well, let me go to the next three terms: antemortem, perimortem, postmortem. What do those terms indicate?
Antemortem means before death. It's usually distinguished because there's hemorrhage in the tissues, and somebody has to have blood pressure in most cases to get hemorrhage in the tissue, unless there's some unique situations. Perimortem means I can't really be sure. Is it at the moment of death, just before death, after death? And postmortem means that there's just nothing to suggest that this is something that happened after, while the person was alive. It happened after they were dead.
So if you're conducting an examination and you see abrasions and contusions, is it possible for you to come to an opinion as to whether they were before death?
Sometimes with abrasions, it's hard. Most of the time, the color changes and surrounding effects to the skin tell you that it is antemortem. Contusions, by definition, mean that there was blood pressure there, or almost always. As I said, there's always exceptions, but always means that there's blood pressure there. It means the person's alive.
And is that because the heart is beating?
It means that the circulatory system still has pressure in it.
Okay. And how does that pressure get there?
Okay, you're right. A heart's beating.
All right. I'm sorry. This is a word I always have trouble pronouncing, but comminuted fracture.
That's perfect. It just means a fracture that's broken, sort of like a china cup with all sorts of interlocking fracture lines running through it.
Hilar region, H-I-L-A-R.
As relates to this case, it refers to where the lungs join the middle of the chest and the trachea. It's the little bridge across between the right and left lungs.
Vaginal introitus.
The entrance into the vagina.
Cervix.
The cervix. Cervix literally means neck. I think it's Greek. I'm not sure.
So the cervix is located where within the vaginal area?
It's the end of the uterus, or the uterine. One of its old names is cervix uteri. It's cervix uteri. It's the end of where the vagina spills out into where the uterus spills out into the vagina.
Not sure if it's rigor or rigor. I've heard both. Mortis.
Either way, rigor mortis is stiffening of the muscles after death.
Livor mortis.
livor mortis is the settling of blood after death. So you can see it under the skin.
So let's assume that an individual, and I'm not speaking of Ms. Feldman here, falls over, heart attack, dies on the floor of their home several hours before somebody finds them. Are these two processes going to occur?
Yes, sir.
And can you explain that?
The rigor mortis will start forming after circulation stops and the blood starts getting more acidotic with lactic acid. The muscle fibers don't contract, they gel. So whatever position he's in, if, as I'm demonstrating, I have my arms in front of my head crossed, then that's the way it'll stay even if you turn him. The livor mortis or liver mortis will settle like sands in an hourglass to wherever gravity pulls them, unless somebody flips the body over again and then the sands start going the other way. But so assuming they're not moved, it will settle down. So if this person fell face up, then their back and their derriere would have a purple color to it related to the blood settling. And after a while, a number of hours, that blood stays there, even if I flip them over again.
Subarachnoid hemorrhage.
It means hemorrhage inside the skull on the surface of the brain on one of the very thin, delicate membranes that covers the brain.
And lastly, hemothorax.
Means blood in the chest.
Doctor, before I get to the actual examination of Ms. Feldman, you indicated that you performed the autopsy on the 19th of February 2015, correct?
Yes, sir.
At some point, did you proceed to the scene where her body had been found?
Yes, sir. I think that afternoon.
So then obviously when you arrived, we can assume that her body wasn't there anymore, correct?
That's correct.
When you went to the scene, did you enter the residence?
Yes, sir.
And did you proceed? Well, so you entered the front door, correct?
Yes, sir.
And this is on the 19th. Do you recall whether you noticed any sort of odor?
Yes, sir.
And what was that?
Strong smell of bleach.
What is it, if you know about bleach? What is it that would? I mean, like, I think most of us are familiar with using bleach during the laundry process on occasion. But what is it that you're smelling? What is that odor from?
Well, bleach is sodium NaOCl. And so as it breaks down, because it's actually fairly unstable, you get chlorine release. So you're smelling chlorine type smells.
You enter the front door. Where do you go?
I went sort of to the central area of the living room. And at one point in time, I walked towards the back door. I don't think I went into the back. I might have taken a step in there, but that's basically it based upon my memory. The scene was still being actively processed, so I didn't want to do anything that might damage things.
Yes, sir. So showing you Exhibit 518. And I would ask you to assume, Doctor, that assume, for the sake of my question, this back door here, Arcadia door, sliding door, opened to the backyard. Is that where you ended your walk at that point?
Somewhere around there, either stepping outside or just staying inside. I just don't remember.
All right, sir. I want to show you Exhibit 468. And, Your Honor, this is one of the more sensitive photographs.
We will not film these photos.
Doctor, I would like you to assume for me, please, for the sake of my question, that, and I'll show you another photograph in just a moment. .232, which is in evidence. Let me show you that one first. So assume for me that when police arrived, there's been testimony that Ms. Feldman's body was found in this position at this location. All right, sir?
Yes, sir.
And then this photograph, assumed for me, was taken after her body had been removed by the medical examiner's office. What I want to do is focus on I'm going to call it a blood stain, blood stains. And what I want to ask you is, we've also had descriptions of blood in the living room area, various locations. The injuries that you observed, which of those injuries could have resulted in the blood that we're seeing here?
The sources of blood on her were her back of her head, on her nose, and in her vagina. The blood I'm seeing in this picture, including the feathering from hair moving through it, is blood from her head primarily.
In your examination of Miss Feldman's body, did you observe any post-mortem injuries, artifacts that might have been related to a product such as bleach?
Yes, sir.
Describe that for us.
Over various parts of the body, there was damage that was consistent with what I've seen before from bleach, where it's a caustic chemical that damages the tissue and typically leaves a yellow or gray appearance. There were splashes, little tiny bleach injuries, splash type ones, various parts of the body. There was even a ring of bleach damage in her umbilicus, her belly button, and there was bleach injuries all along the posterior backside of her body, where you could see where the bleach dammed against the skin that was forming a seal against the floor.
You mentioned the umbilicus. Let me show you Exhibit 519. Is this what you're referring to?
Yes, sir. That's a picture of her belly button.
All right. And so describe for us what about this appearance led you to conclude that this is a result of a product such as bleach?
It's what bleach does to human tissue. I've seen it many times before. It's sort of a yellowish color. Sometimes in here the edges look a little brown. Sometimes it has a grayish color. It's a caustic chemical that's disrupting the tissue. Eventually it would actually start eating further down.
And Your Honor, just for our purposes here, I would say that the rest of the photographs, for the most part, are those that one would consider shouldn't be filmed.
Thank you. We will not film these portions.
So Exhibit 526. Describe, doctor, what we see here in this photograph.
In the center of the photograph, you're seeing the purple color, which is lividity, the settling of blood that I described earlier. You're seeing marks sort of outlining sort of the shoulder blades and the buttocks, which are the result of bleach. Again, some of it is dried, so it has a brown color. As the skin is damaged, it dries. The rest of it's sort of grayish yellow. That's from bleach. And of course, at the top, you can see hemorrhage in her hair, bleeding in her hair.
So, doctor, assuming, excuse me, she was found on her back and this photograph is taken after she's moved, why is this portion, the whiter portion of her skin, why is it not purple as well?
Because it's firmly against a hard surface, which isn't allowing the blood to collect there. It's a blanching spot, just as if I were to, as I'm doing with my pointer finger, press it down here, it's white for a little second because I'm blanching it.
.527, same question really. What are we observing here?
We're looking at the lady's buttocks and the back of her thighs. We're seeing a little bit of lividity showing through and some very minor injuries, a little bit of blood coming down from the genital area towards the back of her. And then primarily you're seeing, again, bleach outlines with the darker parts being areas where it's the damaged skin is dried, and the other areas sort of the yellowish gray color that's caused by caustic bleach.
So, doctor, I'm pointing here too. I'm going to refer to that as the left buttocks area, this red colored stain. What is that?
That's what I just described. There's a little bit on the right side as well. It's blood.
And in your opinion, came from where?
The only source nearby it, and it's contiguous with this source, meaning it runs from it, is the genital area.
A moment ago, you referred to the hair, Miss Feldman's hair, from that photograph in the hallway. But let me show you Exhibit 528. Assume for me that this is a photograph taken of Miss Feldman's, at least a portion of her head. What do you, for you, I mean, what do you see here?
I see that the hair is heavily saturated with blood. Some of it looks like it's trying to clot or it tried to clot. And that I can see there's at least some injuries on the scalp underneath the hair.
Showing you Exhibit 536, doctor. So again, this number 151238 identifies Ms. Feldman's case. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So describe for us what's pictured here that you observed during your examination.
Starting from the bottom, there's two small abrasions on the neck. There's some abrasions on the pinna, the floppy part of the ear. And you can start seeing, although it's not easy to see in this particular photograph, the lacerations on the back of her head.
And these, so these reddish or brownish looking areas on the back of her ears, those are abrasions?
Yes, sir. They're probably abrasions. There is a possibility they could be caused by splashing bleach, but they look more like abrasions.
And obviously, doctor, when this image is taken, can we assume Miss Feldman's head had been shaved?
I shaved it, yes, sir.
Okay. Exhibit 535. Describe what we're seeing here, doctor.
We're looking at the back of her head as if we were standing behind and looking forward from her right shoulder. And you're seeing the 3 lacerations after everything's cleaned up and as much blood removed as possible. A small laceration near where the top, where the head hair has been shaved, a slightly bigger one towards the back of the head, and the largest one sort of the right back of the head.
And when you refer to them as a laceration, what are the possibilities of what caused those lacerations?
Lacerations are due to blunt force. So a blunt impact produces these lacerations. Whether that impact is an object hitting something, whether instead it's the head hitting something, or some other variation on it, it's simply an impact by a blunt force.
And do you have an opinion as to whether the 3 injuries you've described occurred at the same time or separate applications of force?
They're by far most likely separate applications of force. If you think about your own skull and feel it, and it's rounded, how could you hit such a unique surface to tear in 3 different spots in one impact? So it probably represents 3 separate impacts.
Now, I don't have a photograph of it, doctor, but at some point in your examination, would you have opened her skull?
Yes, sir.
And so describe what, if any, injuries that you found beneath the lacerations.
There was hemorrhage in the scalp, again, antemortem hemorrhage. There was hemorrhage in the layer of the arachnoid or the arachnoid, which is a thin, transparent thing.
And you said, I think you described it as the hemorrhage is antemortem, so before death.
Yes, sir.
The force, doctor, that caused these injuries, in your opinion, would that have resulted in Miss Feldman's death?
Unattended, it could, but it's also potentially survivable. The skull is not fractured. There's no contusions or bruises to the brain. But it would have been a significant amount of force that's actually caused this damage. If a person was left there unconscious, lying there for a day, yeah, they could die.
So you use the term unconscious. I want to ask you about that. Would these injuries, could they have rendered Miss Feldman unconscious?
They would have either rendered her unconscious or in some decreased level of consciousness, a stupor, something of that nature. She's been impacted hard enough by whatever means to cause actual bleeding on the surface of the brain, not the brain itself, but on the surface.
Now, doctor, before I get into other injuries, let's assume that there are, for the sake of my question here, that during your examination of Miss Feldman, you found multiple injuries, various locations on her body, her head, her vagina, her torso, because we often get this question. Are you able to tell us in what order they occurred?
No, but I can simply say that they occurred while the person had blood pressure. She was alive when she had her head injury. She's alive when she had her torso injuries. She's alive when she had her vaginal injuries.
Showing you Exhibit 537.
Oh.
What are we looking at here, Doctor?
Would you slide it up a little?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's hard to see. It doesn't come out very well in the photographs and the prints, but basically there are, in the originals, you can see it a little better. There's little pinpoint hemorrhages. You can possibly see a few around there. There's also a slightly larger than petechial hemorrhage right where the forceps are. A small little purple, P-U-R-P-U-R-A-L hemorrhage. But there's petechia there.
And do you have an opinion as to what resulted in those?
The petechia there and on the inside of the lips is consistent with asphyxial compression of the neck.
So showing you Exhibit 538. Do I have it positioned correctly, Doctor?
Yes, that's her upper lip. Yeah, is it her upper lip? Yes, it is, of course. And where the top forcep is clamping down there, just below that, you can probably still see the outline in this picture of some of the petechial hemorrhages. They weren't massive, but they were in multiple different locations.
Doctor, what about below the lower lip? Where my finger is pointing?
Some of those may be real abrasions. Some of them may be related to splashing from bleach type products.
Did you examine Ms. Feldman's tongue?
Yes, sir.
And what, if anything, did you observe?
There was a laceration near the front of the tongue, the tip of the tongue, that would be consistent with what I've seen in the past from when you bite down on your tongue and one of your incisor teeth goes through it.
Do you recall whether you have an opinion as to whether that damage was antemortem, perimortem, or postmortem?
The tongue?
Yes.
I went into the muscle of the tongue and I could see hemorrhage, so it's antemortem.
Again, so while there's still blood pressure.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to show you Exhibit 539. Describe what we're seeing here, Doctor.
We're looking at the front of the lady's neck. You're seeing some injuries on the face that some of them could be bleach. Others clearly to me at least, are antemortem abrasions and contusions, for example, under the chin. And then across the front of the neck, and if you continue, you see that it's slightly sloping upwards, is a band of abrasion and probably some contusion there that does just that. It runs across the front of the neck.
Exhibit 542. And for the time being, Doctor, I'd like to focus on the neck area. Are we seeing a continuation of what you just described on 539?
Yes, sir.
And this 542, would it be correct we're looking at the right side of her neck?
Yes, sir.
Let me show you 543. Would this be focused on the left side of her neck?
Yes, sir.
And do you see this reddish area that I'm pointing to?
Yes, sir.
What is that?
On both of these previous pictures, it's the upward sloping continuation of the abrasion around the front of the neck.
While I have this image up, Doctor, focus please on her left arm. What are we seeing there?
You're seeing the edge of a contusion just above her armpit skin fold. I think that's what that is. But the rest of that is the effect of bleach, a line where the skin was damming the bleach against the skin. In other words, the skin was pressed against the floor or flooring or some surface, and bleach stopped at that point.
And the contusion that you described above her armpit, is that this area here where I'm pointing?
Yes, sir, where you can see just barely a little stubble from her armpit.
Again, would that have been when there was still blood pressure?
Yes, sir.
Back to 542. Again, I'd like you to focus on her right arm. Doctor, what are we seeing here?
We're seeing some lividity effects, but we're also seeing the effects of bleach, particularly on the part of her upper arm that's closer to her head. You're also seeing a bruise, a contusion in that upper arm as well.
Doctor, during the course of your examination of Ms. Feldman, you've described the injury that you observed to her neck. I don't remember if I asked you this, or you said this. The marks across the front of her neck, left side, right side. Was there still blood pressure at that point?
To produce the petechial hemorrhages, it's likely it was, yes, sir.
Okay. And did you cut into her neck?
Yes, sir.
And why would you do that?
To see what internal damage there was and to see what other patterns or effects there might be.
So sometimes, Doctor, I look at these photographs, I'm not sure what I'm looking at, but 544, I'm going to ask you to tell us what we're seeing here.
I think that's oh yes, I know where this is now. And I only know because I've reviewed the photographs in the past, because right now that would be sort of hard to orient. Although lower part is part of the trachea and cartilage. The upper part, I see either a horn or hyoid bone, and muscle. So we're looking at the right cricoid cartilage. It's a cartilage that's between the laryngeal cartilage, which is the one you think about as your voice box or your Adam's apple, and the trachea or windpipe below it. And it's showing hemorrhage, and you can see that some of the little cartilage pieces are displaced. They're fractured, comminuted fractures.
And the hemorrhage, would that have been antemortem?
Yes, sir.
And what caused this hemorrhage that we see?
The cause of the hemorrhage is blunt force applied to the neck. Exactly how that blunt force occurred is possibly due to the ligature, but it's more often, far more often, I've seen it when someone actually has their hands around a person's neck.
So you're describing some things. I have exhibits 545, 546. They're not in evidence. I'm just using them, Doctor, to have you describe the neck area. So let me put 545 first on the screen.
I just want to confirm no objection.
No objection.
Okay.
Thank you, Honor.
Let's go through this. Take us through this, please.
Do you
What do we
want me to mark that, or what
No,
are you
just-
asking me to do?
just identify what we're looking at, what the terms are, etc.
This is just a schematic diagram labeled with different parts of the anterior neck structures. Again, for orientation, so everybody knows where they are, once one area is clearly labeled Adam's apple, that prominence of your thyroid cartilage is what you feel as an Adam's apple. Below that cartilage, they interlock, is the cricoid cartilage. On the right side of that cricoid cartilage is where there were fractures and hemorrhage in there. On the top of the thyroid cartilages, there are actually several that make the one big unit. The superior horns, which look like two horns on either side, just below the yellow thing, which is the hyoid bone. Both of those horns were broken and had hemorrhage around them. And then the hyoid bone also had hemorrhage on the left side. Now, the hyoid bone was not fused like it is in this picture, like it would be in my neck. I'm old. In a younger person, it usually has cartilage and is in three pieces. So there was hemorrhage where the cartilage at the left side wing of the hyoid meets the body of the hyoid.
And you mentioned a couple of times, I think, you observed fractures.
Yes, sir. The cartilage, the superior horns were fractured. The cartilage of the cricoid was fractured. The hyoid suggested damage, but it wasn't a fracture.
Let me show you 546 again for demonstrative purposes only. Describe what we're seeing here, Doctor.
You're seeing anatomical diagram again showing the front of the neck. It's showing the jaw, lower jaw exposed, and the various muscles of the neck that you can feel. For example, a very big long one is your sternocleidoid mastoid, which you can feel when you turn your neck. And you can also see the hyoid bone where various muscles from below the jaw and coming up from the neck join into that bone. And you can see the prominence of your thyroid cartilage, the Adam's apple there as well. And you can actually see the cricoid cartilage. You didn't ask me, sorry.
Are you able to point on this diagram where the fractures were?
Mostly. There was a fracture of the cricoid on the cricoid cartilage on the right side. So if you go up the midline from the picture and just before you reach your Adam's apple cartilage, the one below it on the right side, that muscle had hemorrhage in it and had fractures. You cannot see the wings of the superior horns of the thyroid cartilage, but they're underneath these muscles that are below the hyoid bone.
But in 545, you can see the horns that you've talked about.
Yes, sir. The horns are labeled superior horn. They're the gray horn-like things. They're called cornu, or horns, that come off that cartilage. Again, they're part of several cartilages put together.
So, Ms. Feldman was she not approximately 31 years of age?
Yes, sir.
What does that have to do, if anything, about what you would have seen in terms of her hyoid bone?
Her hyoid bone, it wasn't heavily ossified. All these structures get bony as you get older. They ossify, and they get more brittle, okay? And her hyoid bone was still that of a young to middle-aged woman.
So if someone heard that an individual had been strangled and their hyoid bone had been fractured or broken, does that always occur during strangulation?
No,
And why not?
depends on how well they were being strangled, how often they were being strangled, how the hands were positioned, dozens and dozens of other purely technical factors. But it is one of the more classic findings in forms of strangulation.
Let's talk about the fractures that you described to the cartilage within the neck area. Is it unusual to find those kinds of fractures?
In throttling cases, people putting their hands, and even sometimes in ligature or garroting type strangulations, no, you see that. You don't see it all the time, but you see it frequently.
Okay. And in order to cause those fractures in a young woman who was 31 years of age, what sort of force would need to be applied to result in the fractures that you saw?
A pincher type squeezing force, as one could do with a hand, squeezing from either side, pushing inwards. That's the classic way to do it, sort of a plier kind of effect.
Can strangulation, either with a ligature or your hands, result in rendering someone unconscious?
Absolutely, it can.
And why does that happen?
Because you've interrupted the blood flow. People think strangulation is the airway. It's not. It's the blood vessels, the veins and arteries. When you block those, the brain doesn't get oxygen and you pass out.
And can you estimate how long that might take?
How was the person being strangled? And was it stop-started continually? If I go based upon a single strangulation event, I mean, even things as simple as suicidal hangings, a person is usually unconscious in a matter of seconds. It could be as little as 15, usually a little longer, a half a minute. And their brain is dead in 3 to 5 minutes.
Have you personally conducted postmortem examinations of individuals that had been either strangled or hung?
Many times in strangled people, we don't typically do autopsies on hanging cases anymore unless there's something doesn't quite add up.
Would in your career at least, are most of the hangings that you've been involved with at least considered to be suicide?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, let's talk about first of all, do you have an opinion? If we assume that Ms. Feldman was manually strangled at some point, would the force have been applied from the front or the back, if you have an opinion?
Manual strangulation occurs with the force applied to the front of the neck.
Well, we have this ligature that you've described, this potential ligature strangulation, and the injury was consistent with a ligature being used, correct?
Yes, sir.
In examining Ms. Feldman's body, were you able to come to any conclusion as to what was used as a ligature?
Not really. I mean, there's nothing that, sometimes you have marks that say a chain was used. Sometimes you can see the pattern of a certain kind of rope. But I have no idea if when she received this injury, she was dressed and there were layers there. I don't know what was used. I don't know if there was something else intervening between it. So no, I can't tell you what it was other than it was some kind of band that went around her neck from the front.
Was it different in appearance than a hanging?
Actually, it was very similar in appearance to a hanging in that the marks were on the front of the neck, across the front, and sloping upwards, and basically disappeared at the back of the neck by the time you reached the back of the neck.
So based upon your experience in your examination of Miss Feldman, whoever was using this ligature to strangle, my terms, Miss Feldman, strangle her or restrain her in some way, were they in front of her, behind her, to the side of her?
Relative to her body, they were behind her. I don't know if it occurred. She's on the floor, she's in a sitting position, standing, but the person was behind her.
Doctor, whoops. Before I move to Ms. Feldman's hands, a photograph of her face that I neglected to show you, Exhibit 522. And I'd like, first of all, focus on her chin, if I can get it there. The chin area. What are we seeing here?
You're seeing an abrasion in that picture. In one of your previous pictures, there's a little bruising there as well.
And here again, do we see these marks that are at least consistent with some type of ligature?
Yes, sir.
I'd like you to focus on her right ear for me, please. Appears there was an earring there, correct?
Yes, sir.
Was there an earring in her left ear?
No, sir.
And with this earring, you know, when you complete a postmortem examination, doctor, are there items that you sometimes turn over to the investigating agency?
Yes, sir.
And is that earring such an item?
It either went there or into property. Either way, it was conveyed to the appropriate people.
Dr. Exhibit 521, I'd like to focus on Ms. Feldman's nose, if you will. What are we seeing there?
You're seeing an abrasion going across her nose, probably some bruising underneath it. There's actually a small laceration on the upper part of her nose and a small fleck of some foreign material.
That that injury would have, in your opinion, been caused how?
It was a blunt impact injury.
Did it fracture her nose?
I didn't see a fracture in the x-rays, and I couldn't feel a fracture.
Okay, now I'd like to move to her hands. Your Honor, what 11:49. Okay. Exhibit 524. And as sometimes happens with these photographs, I can't tell which hand this is.
This is the left hand.
All right. Describe for us what we're seeing here.
You're seeing the back of the lady's left hand. You're seeing multiple bruises, purple to purple blue bruises, primarily in her knuckle areas. You're also seeing some tan yellow discolorations that are probably splashed bleach.
And let's focus on the, I'm sorry, did you describe these as contusions?
These are contusions, that is bruising.
All right. Would there have been blood pressure when these were caused?
Yes, sir, the person would have been alive with blood pressure.
And they are a result of are they a result of some sort of force?
Yes, sir, they're blunt impact.
So what are our options here?
She either struck something with her hand or somehow her hand was thrust in such a fashion that it struck something. It's either a blow or an impact.
Exhibit 525. Do we know which hand this is?
Yes, sir, it's the right hand.
Okay. Again, if you could describe any injuries that we see here.
On the back of this right hand, not on the knuckles, a little further back towards the wrist, there's multiple contusions on there. Then the yellow tan marks probably are splash bleach. They could be real abrasions, but either way, they're minor.
$532. Which hand?
It's her right hand. I'm dyslexic, so I have to do this all the time. Sorry. Showing a contusion at the base of her thumb.
$531.
This is showing her left hand. And actually, most of it that you're seeing is the effects of bleach, where the bleach is actually starting to corrode into the tissues. That's the yellowish staining. But you're also seeing that 2 of her fingernail extensions have somehow been broken off.
$533.
Yes, sir.
Which hand?
This is the right hand. And other than the bleach effects, this is the palmar surface of the right hand, excuse me. Other than the bleach effects, and I don't know why it's blackened at that edge, I just don't know, but it's not a bruise. You're not seeing anything. The darkening over the base of the thumb is the normal muscle there. That's called the thenar muscle. And her fingernails here are intact. You can see the red extension that's missing on the other hand.
$530.
Yes, sir.
Which hand?
This is the left hand.
And again, are we seeing evidence of the bleach?
Yes, we're seeing evidence of the bleach, and we're seeing evidence of where her, what are these called? my wife gets them all the time, French extensions, whatever they're called, have been broken off on the third and fourth digits.
Were there any fractures of her fingers?
Not that I detected.
This, I'm pointing here to the up, like above, I think I'm pointing to above her thumb, close to the wrist.
That's the thenar eminence.
Is that an abrasion or a contusion?
I think it's a contusion we saw in a previous picture, but it is a contusion.
Your Honor, I think I've ended with the hands. I think this would be a good time to take a break.
Okay. So ladies and gentlemen, we'll go ahead and break for lunch. We will see you back at 1:30, and please remember that admonition.
interpreted as marks related to fingernails.
Now, I think earlier I recall you're describing the manual strangulation, and you demonstrated a pinching action using your fingers, correct?
My finger and my thumb, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So, if we assume for the sake of argument that the marks you observed were from fingernails, do you know whether they would be the person who strangled her or from her struggling with the ligature?
I can't tell.
Showing you Exhibit 540. Doctor, we're looking at a photograph taken at the medical examiner's office of Miss Feldman's legs.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what injuries, if any, did you observe?
In the picture, you can see on both legs, around the knees and on the shins, there are several bruises up to about 2 inches in greatest dimension. There's also a lot of splash effect that would be, or yellow damaged skin that would be consistent with the splash effect from bleach.
And the bruises or abrasions, would that have occurred while Miss Feldman's heart was beating, when there was blood pressure?
Yes, when she was alive, yes, sir.
Now, doctor, are you familiar with the term defensive injuries?
Yes, sir.
And what would that mean to you?
It's an interpretation of what you see as injuries. The interpretation is that you see injuries on the outstretched parts of arms, like forearms, or on hands, that indicate a person is trying to fend off an attacker. So it's a conclusion, but it's based upon what you see.
Okay. And do you see that anything consistent with that, with the injuries you observed?
The injuries on her hands are consistent with that, and some of the bruises on her arms are non-specific, but they could be part of that.
Doctor, I have a couple of photographs that are in evidence to show you. So what I need for you, for the purpose of my next questions, assume a couple of things. These photographs were taken of an area of the swimming pool in Miss Feldman's backyard. Number one, so showing you Exhibit 97. And I want you to, if you will, please focus on this, what appears to be a missing pool tile. All right, sir? I would also ask you to assume, doctor, that, again, assume that the other earring that was not, that matched the earring that was on Miss Feldman's ear, that we saw a photo later, the other earring was found in the pool, okay? My question to you is, given the injuries to her, any of the injuries that you observed that could have been caused by forceful contact with the edge of this swimming pool,
Yes, sir.
what would those be?
Well, I don't know that we've discussed it. I can't remember from the morning, but that would be consistent with some of the injuries inside of her chest.
Would that be related to the potential compression asphyxiation?
Well, the compression, it could have also caused some asphyxiation, but all I can be sure is it's a blunt compression.
Did you see any evidence of compression asphyxiation?
I saw that inside the chest, the hilum of the right lung, I think, had some hemorrhage around it and slight tearing. There was also a collection less than a pint of blood in the right chest cavity, and there were bubbles of air going into the mediastinum, which is the soft tissue around the heart. And that there wasn't any single dramatic bruise on the front of her chest or bruise in the back of her chest. So it would be a very broad force that abruptly put a lot of pressure into her chest cavity, and that would be consistent with something like this tile.
Again, assume for me, doctor, showing you Exhibit 100, assume that Miss Feldman's blood and her hair, part of her hair, was found on this tile. Would that be consistent with what you're describing?
Yes, sir, but it would also be consistent with that's how she could have gotten some of her head lacerations.
Doctor, when do you recall, doctor, giving the Scottsdale Police Department crime lab folks permission to take swabs of from Miss Feldman's body at the scene?
No, I'm not the one that did that. Dr. Who did that.
All right, sir. Okay. The last thing I want I think it's the last thing that I want to ask you about. In your examination, did you find any injuries to Miss Feldman's vaginal area, inside the vagina?
Yes, sir.
In doing that evaluation, are you familiar with the terminology sexual assault kit?
Yes, sir.
And did you utilize one of those?
I utilized at least some of the components of one. A lot of the components never matter.
Okay. So explain what you did.
Well, I followed whatever procedure we were doing at the time. There should have been a record of whatever samples were saved, but I basically saved any trace evidence I saw on the body surfaces, and then did at least under visualization a swab inside the vagina and a swab of the rectum, and I probably did a swab of the oral cavity, but again, I don't have those records.
And you would not have performed any testing of those items, correct?
No, I don't think we did slides back then. I do them now, but we didn't do them back then.
All right. And would those have been turned over to the investigative agency?
Yes, they would have been put into the chain of custody in our office and given to the police, yes.
Describe, doctor, what, if any, injuries that you observed to Ms. Feldman's vaginal area or internally of her vagina?
Near the outside of the entrance of the vagina, there were various tears associated with hemorrhage in the tissues, bleeding in the tissues, bruising, both on the right and left side. The largest one was on the left side, and it was fairly big. I'd have to refer to my report for the dimensions, but it's fairly big and it extended inside to the inner wall of the vagina.
Doctor, could you turn to page 5 of 10 of your report?
Yes, sir.
And I want to direct your attention to the paragraph entitled Injuries to the Genital Area. Could you read that to yourself? And
Objection, Your Honor.
Could you approach, please?
to review that portion of your report.
If you need things like dimensions, yes, sir.
All right, sir. Could you then read that section that I referenced to yourself, not out loud, but to yourself?
Yes, sir.
Now, one other preliminary question. Let's talk about this report for a moment. When you conduct an autopsy like you did of Ms. Feldman, is a written report prepared by you?
Yes, sir.
And does it document your findings that you saw at the time?
I hope so. Yes, sir.
How long after you did your evaluation? Well, let me ask you this. Do you type it out yourself? Do you dictate it?
I don't know which one of those I was doing at the time, but if I dictated it, I used to use IBM type software. If I type it myself. And I actually always type my own reports since the 1990s.
Okay. So let me ask you this. You indicated that there was an injury that went internally, maybe not your words, but inside the vagina. What was the measurement of that injury?
I didn't measure how far it went inside the vagina, but the overall measurement of that laceration was 2.5 inches.
And describe the laceration extended internally, correct?
Yes, sir.
And what do you mean by internally?
Meaning past sort of the circle that forms the entrance to the vagina, so that it's extending beyond the vulvar structures into the wall of the vagina.
Showing you Exhibit 534. Can you describe for us what we're seeing here, Doctor?
Yes, sir. You're seeing a picture of her vagina showing that laceration. I should have really said it's extending from the labia minora there, but it's extending into the vagina. You can't see it going inside. You also see one or two other lacerations higher up and lower. Oh, and to orient yourself, the top of the picture is the anterior part of her body, and the lower part, you can barely see it, you can see her rectum is the posterior part of the body.
All right. But you yourself, if I understood you correctly, observed the laceration that went internally.
Yes, sir.
Doctor, in your experience as a forensic pathologist, medical examiner, have you had any experience with injuries to the vagina of women caused by penetration by an object?
Yes, sir.
And I want to clarify that. I mean an object other than a penis.
Yes, sir.
Can you give us some examples of what you have seen?
I've seen a hairbrush pushed in to do damage with both ends probably used. I've seen bottles stuck in and that were the wrong size to be able to go in there. I've seen a crack pipe used, a metal crack pipe used to cause damage. I think I've seen glass used. I'm trying to remember that. I don't want to mix up cases between that and rectal injuries, but I've seen various things done.
So, do you have any opinions, doctor, as to whether or not the injuries that you observed were the result of penetration by a male penis?
It's extremely, extremely, extremely unlikely. This is a healthy woman with normal tissues, not an elderly person where it would tear very easily. And to be quite frank, it's extremely unlikely a male is going to do that kind of thing that would leave injuries on himself.
You mentioned, doctor, a bottle or glass could potentially have caused these injuries, correct?
I've seen that before, yes, sir.
So I want to show you what's in evidence, states Exhibit 10. Are you able to observe the glass bottle piece?
Yes, sir.
Could this have caused those injuries?
And in its current state in the picture, yes, the glass edges could have caused tearing, a tearing that's somewhere almost at the point of cutting. And also the bottle cap could also have caused those injuries where it's crimped.
If you give me just a moment, Your Honor. Doctor, one last question. The 2.5-inch long laceration that you described earlier that extended internally into the vagina, where did that laceration end?
It ended on the internal vaginal wall.
Can you tell us where in relation to the cervix it ended?
If the person was standing upright, it would be below the cervix.
Thank you. I have no further questions. Your Honor.
And cross-examination by the defense whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Did you speak with the state during lunch?
About Lubbock, Texas, and about other old cases, but nothing related to this case.
Okay. other old cases similar to this case?
No,
Okay, thank you. The state approached you about testifying in this case in September of this year, correct?
that sounds right. I don't have my calendar, but that sounds right.
Right. And it's been about 10 years, I guess not quite 10 years, since you were actually practicing as a medical examiner in Arizona.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And one reason for that is that you had some medical issues, in California. I think you testified that you had gone to California, and those medical issues prevented you from traveling.
Yes, sir. I was on high-dose steroids, and I wasn't getting in an airplane.
Okay. And now those have subsided?
They're stable.
Okay. Okay. And because you're practicing in California, your Arizona license has expired.
Yes, a long time ago.
Okay. And from your involvement in February of 2025 in whatever time that you actually left Maricopa County, until September, you weren't involved in this case.
I don't think so. I mean, maybe somebody made some phone calls, but I didn't have any defense interviews, prosecution interviews, and nothing like that. No, sir.
Okay. And you didn't testify in any other proceedings in this case?
No, sir.
Okay. Is that typical?
Is that typical? When I leave a state, unless there's something unique or a strong need on one party's part or the other, they usually just farm it off to one of the other people locally here.
Okay. So it's common practice that if a medical examiner leaves to another area, then a current medical examiner in Maricopa County is assigned to represent the medical examiner in Maricopa County in a particular criminal case in Arizona.
Yeah, I had to do it for Dr. Schwartz here. I did it in Maricopa County for Dr. Schwartz. So yes.
So the reverse has happened when you're in Maricopa County.
Yeah, and in New York City as well.
County. Okay, thank you. Okay. And when the state contacted you, did you ask them to send you some materials to review?
Yes, sir. I asked them because I had nothing. I had kept nothing from the office, so I asked them for the autopsy report and relevant photographs.
Okay. And some of the records you reviewed were the autopsy report, the photographs, transcripts from another medical examiner from another proceeding in this case?
Dr. Wallace, yes, sir.
Okay. And transcripts of the defense interview of that other medical examiner in this case?
I don't remember the defense interview, but I'm pretty sure I had it. Yes, sir.
Okay. And the transcript was from a proceeding